Welcome, everyone. This is the Rotary eClub of Silicon Valley. Every week, we bring you stories of people making a difference in the lives of their communities. And this week, we are celebrating some local stuff. So I'll start by saying my name is Rushton Hurley. I am the charter president of the Rotary eClub of Silicon Valley and a guy who handles a lot of the programs. And I am wearing a Relay for Life shirt. Why is that? Because our club is getting ready to take part in Relay for Life 2021 here in Santa Clara, or close by in Santa Clara. And if you are watching this as a recording, we've already done it, but we'll do it again next year. So hopefully you will get excited and get involved in that. Fight cancer in a big way. Now, talking about ways to engage your community, we have speaking to us today two fine folks from Albany, a town that is in the East Bay here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and the very cool work they have done around music and community, and middle schoolers, special touched by the heavens crowd that they are. And so you'll soon learn, if you haven't already read it, that Jen is an educator, that Eugenie is a psychologist, and they have made some magic happen, and I am really excited for us to share it. So with that, Jen and Eugenie, I hand it over to you. Go.
Thank you. Well, I'm Jen, and I'm going to talk a little bit first about a project that I worked on called Cobrachella, and I'll go ahead and just jump in. So Cobrachella, I'm a teacher here in Albany, but I'm also a parent. So when my child was at the middle school, I joined the PTA with my good friend Dorothy, and we were on a big bike ride, kind of like Relay for Life. We were doing the Tour de Cure, raising money for diabetes on a long bike ride. And we were brainstorming ways to kind of reinvigorate the activities that the middle school PTA was working on. We knew that it's really hard to meet the needs of middle schoolers in terms of participation and excitement around things revolving around school. So we were trying to think about ways to, revamp what was happening at the middle school. So we talked and we asked ourselves, what kind of event would inspire middle schoolers to get involved and to participate? We really wanted to go from like a fall festival where they were bobbing for apples and no one was showing up to something where middle schoolers really thought it was exciting. And so as we rode down those among the wineries, we were brainstorming together, and we thought of a music festival. And we were thinking hair wraps and henna tattoos and all kinds of cool things that maybe 13, 14-year-olds would think was very cool. They probably can't go to Coachella themselves at that age, but we could maybe bring Coachella to them. Now, Albany Middle School's mascot is the cobra, and so we had kids vote on a name. We were going for Cobrapalooza, but that kind of dated us, and the kids liked Cobrachella much more. So that's how Cobrachella was born. So this is Dorothy and I on one of our many planning evenings, and we realized as we started this up that there were a lot of questions that had to be answered. We had to think about things like how would we form committees and get people to help us out, because it was a lot of work. How are we going to find musicians? How are we going to publicize our event? How are we going to get kids to come to this event? These were the big questions we were focused on: how to involve the whole school community, what activities should we include, and how to get volunteers for our event. So these are things that we were wrestling with. One really big thing we realized is that we had to rely on people in our community to really jump in and help. So we found some people, some parents who would volunteer to do some of the big work. So we had an amazing dad at the time who was very into music festivals. He was also a graphic designer, and he agreed to be our graphic designer for us, and he came up with our font and our logos. The Cobra was our main kind of musician logo. And so having that branding really helped us pull together a fun event. We advertised around town for bands. We got a really great band from Richmond who saw our flyer in the Albany High School gym. They were like a legit band, kind of a boy band, and they stole the show. But we also had lots of kids form bands. just right within the middle school to participate. And some of those bands are still playing today, 5 or 6 years later. So we did a lot of marketing. We had swag, we made t-shirts, we had stickers, we used wristbands for admittance. So everything had that brand and logo on it. We did lots of old school advertising around school as well. And then we had an Instagram account. And I think we were even on Snapchat after a year or two because we realized that that was the place to be with middle schoolers. We also had another parent in the community who was, oh my gosh, I'm going to go way over. I'm going to go faster now. We had another parent who is really amazing with props. He's an industrial designer, and he built us a lot of amazing props to put out. We used just all the borrowed pop-ups from all the softball moms and Boy Scout people, and gathered all their pop-ups to kind of keep everything. These were our food trucks where we sold food through the windows of our cardboard food trucks. We had lots of props where you could take photos, and we recycled these things year after year. We had some storage that we could use. So we only had to do these once and then kind of clean them up each year. We really, really wanted the band experience to be special. We wanted them to feel like rock stars. So we put together, again, with volunteer support and donations, a green room where they got to hang out. They were the only ones that had access into the green room, was the members of the bands. They got to wear all access lanyards and feel super special, especially those 6th graders really loved this. We had a step and repeat where the bands could take band photos. And we rented a stage and had a sound system. So these guys really, really felt like it was a special day for them. In terms of the festival experience and in really drawing the kids in, we did lots of surveys of the students to ask about what types of activities they wanted to do. And these were changing. We ran this festival for 5 years before we stopped last year when we were we're on hiatus. But we had a swag table, we did caricatures, you paid a price to get in, and then you bought tickets to do the different events. We had the chess club of Berkeley came and set up giant chess games. We had a graffiti artist who would put your name or whatever word you wanted on a graffiti hat live while you waited. We had remote control cars, and we even did VR this last year that we had the festival. Lots and lots of like floaties to sit on, and just a fun, really vibrant hangout space. We had live graffiti going on, and the most popular was our candy bar, where for a 13-year-old to pay one price for a bag, and then you got to shove it full of as much candy as you could fit in your bag in the candy bar. So that was a very popular spot. So we had lots of bands, like I said, come together just for this event. I would go back now and ask myself what kind of an event would inspire middle schoolers to get involved. Well, this definitely nailed it. We nailed it because we now have kids that come back. We have our 5th graders attend, so that this is their first exposure to the middle school. And I know I'm a minute over my time, but here are just some last pictures of lots and lots of great participation. This is a little guy belting out "Smells Like Teen Spirit" by Nirvana. And when I saw him do that, I knew we had kind of met our goal. So that is Cobrachella in a nutshell. And we'd be happy to talk to anyone else in any community that would be interested in doing something similar. And then I'm going to pass it over to Eugenie, who has a whole other event.
All right. Thanks, Jen, for starting us off on Cobrachella. So it sounds like I stole the name, but it was just too easy to call this next event the Albany COVIDchella, because just when everything was shutting down, I thought, hey, we can still do a music festival during COVID times. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I started this festival. So basically, it's a safe and socially distant citywide music festival. And what happened was in the summer of 2020, after about several months of being locked down in COVID quarantine, I started to really miss live music. I'm an amateur musician. I play in a band and I sing in a jazz choir, and I missed doing that, and I missed going to see live shows. I also felt a lot of gratitude for my situation. I was employed still. I had secure housing. I wasn't sick. And I knew there was a lot of suffering out there. As a psychologist, I hear the stories directly. So I wanted to help people if I could. And one day I was just taking a walk in my neighborhood, and Albany is a very small town. It's about 18,000 people, just north of Berkeley. And it's a flat little tiny town. So I noticed, there's a lot of driveways around, and I thought, there's a lot of musicians in Albany, a lot. And so I thought, hey, I think we could actually have a music festival in the streets of Albany. And that is kind of how Albany COVIDchella was born. So I also had to think about, how am I going to make this happen? So these are some of the questions I had to answer. First, how to find musicians. And remember, this is COVID times, right? So no one's socializing, no one's going out. Everyone's on Zoom. How do I make sure that if I have a safe and socially distant music festival, that we actually are safe? How do we keep the public safe and keep musicians safe? Also, how do I publicize the event? And because I wanted to help people, I wanted to make sure that it was a beneficiary to help people who are suffering from the COVID times. How do I pick a beneficiary? And then I knew that I wanted to make sure that the map and the schedule was available. What's the easiest way to do that? I had to figure that out. And I thought, just to make it extra fun, it would be fun to have, merchandise, just like you have at rock concerts. So those are some of the questions I had to answer. The picture that you see that's my son and my husband posing in front of our garage. And this is the very first flyer that went out for the Albany COVIDchella. So I've never organized a citywide music festival during a pandemic. I don't know too many people who have, but things that I had to do is, to start with, of course, I had to find the talent, and that was the easiest part by far. So there are tons of musicians in our town, and musicians all know musicians. So I put some things out on Facebook and some, internet things like Nextdoor, Albany Patch. I posted some flyers around town, and through word of mouth, it was very, very easy to find musicians. A bigger question really was, how do I protect the public health? So I decided that the best way to do this would be to have a private Facebook group with membership questions. So I formed a Facebook group called the Albany COVIDchella. And I can talk more about the rules if you're interested a little bit later. So that's how all the communications happened, through this private Facebook group. Now, another question was, how do I select a beneficiary? And so I thought, what is the biggest need right now, biggest unmet need during COVID that everybody is affected by? And so to me, the obvious one was food insecurity. So Alameda County Food Bank, Community Food Bank, was posting that they had an increased need of 50% at the start of the pandemic, and with 1 in 4 residents experiencing hunger or food insecurity. So that was the most obvious choice. So I picked the Alameda County Community Food Bank, and they had a very great development department. So it was very easy to work with them to make a fundraiser through the food bank. In terms of organizing it, because of technology, it made it very easy. So Google Maps, I don't know if you know this, but Google Maps actually has the ability to do customized maps. So I basically made my own customized map, and you'll see the little signs as guitars and music notes. So the guitar signified that the events were happening on Saturday, and I think the music notes were Sunday. And you can see this is our town, and these are locations where all the bands would be all over town. They're mostly people's driveways and front porches. In terms of some of the details, the map was very user-friendly. And so you would click on the map, and if you clicked on each icon, you could see the name of the act, the address, the type of music that the person was playing or the band was playing, the start time, and the duration of the show. So it made it very easy. And of course, it's Google Maps, so if you don't know how to get there, it'll give you instructions on how to get from place to place to place. And then I have a friend who lives in Oakland who's an artist, and she and I got together, and she helped me design, or I helped her design, vice versa, a fun t-shirt design. So for 2020, we came up with this one, and you can see it says Cobrachella, a little masked person, Albany 2020. And then for this year, we designed this one, and we kind of stole Oakland's thing, the I hella love, but It's okay. So I hella love Albany COVIDchella, and I don't know if you can see the detail, but some of the letters are actually music symbols. So those were the merchandise that we sold. And then I'm going to just show you a few pictures of the variety of musicians that we had. So this is just, there's just a few pictures. There are a total of over 40 bands that would play at each event. But here's one, Crowford Day. They did Americana, kind of old-timey music. This is a scene where you can see the musicians off where the brown house was in the back. And then people were sitting on the Meridian and enjoying themselves. This is Burke T. Here's a rock and roll band called the Back Pages. We had another band on our street called Bordel Sans Nom, which in French translates into a hot mess. They did rock and punk and jazz, all kind of combined. And we had a mariachi band as well. This is another musician who lived down the street. There are a lot of musicians on my street. Actually, I live right next door to a 2-time Grammy Award winning musician. And across the street, we have another. So many musicians. And we had another jazz group down the street. This is funny. I'm noticing all of these musicians are on my street. Every single one I've listed except for the first one. Jazz quartet right here. And then the other thing that was really fun was we had a lot of enthusiastic fans, and I just thought this group was the best. So this is right after Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away, and we had these these women dressed up as Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and they rode their bikes around town. So here they are posing. I'm not sure what they're doing, but they look like they're having fun. In terms of it being the fundraiser, how successful was it? Well, it was a lot of fun for me because the fundraiser we had for the food bank, we raised almost $12,000. And you can see on the check, there's my excuse me, my husband and my son right there in the check. And that was the first flyer that we sent out. And I got to be on TV. So the Channel 5 KPIX invited me to give this check to them on TV. So I say, this is my 15 seconds of fame. And I say, Albany COVIDchella rocks on. Excuse me. Total of 66 acts have performed at 5 events. And we have lots of musicians coming from out of town now. We had over 40 acts for COVIDchella 4 and 5. So we now spread it into 2 afternoons. Excuse me. Besides the food bank, we've also had other beneficiaries. So they've included the Music Fund, Albany Music Fund, Albany School Care, Albany Community Foundation, Albany Performing Arts, and Calliope. These are all Albany related local beneficiaries, but excuse me. I also interspersed the beneficiaries with what I call as musicians' choice events, being very sensitive to musicians who are also out of work. So the musicians could either keep their tips if they needed the money or wanted the money, or they could choose their own beneficiaries. So they weren't only beneficiaries that I selected, but ones that they wanted to do as well. The next event is going to happen, barring fires, locusts, and frogs, on October 9th and 10th. And this one is going to benefit disaster victims from the hurricane and from the fires in Northern California through an organization called Direct Relief. And people have asked, are you going to continue the COVIDchella when COVID is over? Hopefully it will be over someday. And my answer is yes, I will plan to continue it even when COVID is over, as long as people want to play and audience members want to come, and that we still use the event to inspire philanthropic giving. So we'll keep doing that. And here's a picture of my band. Just thought I'd throw that in there. We're called the Basements, and we're like a rock and roll cover band. That's it. Thank you.
Wonderful stuff. Nicely done, guys. All right. Well, I want to introduce a couple of people we have on the recording from our club. Wave, when I call your name first, in San Francisco. Actually in Novato, right? So Chris Major, one of our newest members for the club, he is with us. Thank you, Chris, for being part of that. I know you were excited when she mentioned the chess programs as a part of Cobrachella. And here in San Jose, Cecilia Babkirk, all right, who is our lead for our global grant for our club benefiting the town of Soda in rural Ethiopia. So with that, I'd like to jump right into questions. I'll ask the first one, and looking at something like this, I'm kind of in that space of like, all right, there's got to be a lot of volunteers, right, who are getting involved in this. Talk a little bit about the volunteer structure and what it takes to run the festival.
Either one.
Either one.
Okay. I mean, I
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so this clearly was the idea of Dorothy and I, but we realized, just how much work it was going to be to pull it off. So we had some higher level volunteers where we made committees. So there was a food committee. There was a music committee who would, almost like the set person who would keep the bands coming and kind of manage, stage manager, basically. We had an arts and crafts committee that would, decide on what kinds of, the caricatures and henna tattoos and things like that. We had a swag committee we even had a candy committee, so they got to choose what kind of candy to order. And it was always fun to sit in on their meetings because a lot of times they ordered the candy ahead of time. So we would snack on it while we were meeting. And then, so they kind of made the major decisions about their section. And then we just used volunteer spot, and we had a volunteer coordinator who would set up what shifts we needed and manage the volunteer spot to actually get volunteers from the community to join in day of. It probably was about 5 months of committee meetings. I mean, our festival is, fairly organized. I think that you could really scale this idea down if you needed to, based on, what you've got available to you. But that's basically how we did it, was committee based, and then lots and lots of volunteer help on the day of.
Got it. Very cool. Chris, I see that you are unmuted and ready to go. Let's get to your question.
Thank you, first of all, for a wonderful, wonderful presentation. I just wrote down basic notes about ingenuity and inspiration and how it's all made happen by community development. And my question would be, and I was piqued by your interest, obviously I teach chess as part of Risa Intellect, and I think it's a valuable skill set kids 3rd through 5th grade, 6th grade can learn. And so I was obviously more excited to see that you had incorporated chess as part of your music. What are you going to do down the road in terms of developing middle school involvement in your music? I know the School of Rock is starting in San Rafael. So I just wanted to know, is there a vision there? And I would love to come down at any of your next events, and I'll set up chess boards and chess tables and just create just another dimension of music and just being sedentary. So anyway, I've gone too long, but how does the middle school envision? Because I know this is just amazing what you guys did. This is beautiful.
Well, for Cobrachella, we really, I'm a teacher, and I'm also a mom of a kid who's musical in terms of, he was DJing at the time and kind of making their own music. And so we just realized that there's kids fit into all kinds of categories. And so we wanted to draw in kids, not just that were musical and already involved in music, but would enjoy hanging out regardless. And so that's where chess came in. That's where games like we had a shooting hoops game. That's where the remote control cars came in. That's where the VR sets came in. We really wanted to appeal to kids that weren't just like, oh, I'm not in band or I don't sing in a choir. We wanted them to come to and have activities that appealed to them. And so that's when we reached out to the Berkeley Chess Club, and the Berkeley Chess Club does some classes in our elementary schools. And so we already had a connection with them. Mine just went off to college. And so it's been a while since I've been involved at the middle school. I still volunteer at Cobrachella when it's happening, but I haven't been a main organizer of it for a couple years now. And my friend Dorothy ended up having 2 kids that were exactly 3 years apart. So when her first one was done with middle school, her second one was coming in. So Dorothy was involved for twice as long as me in the main organizing of it. Her younger one is in high school already. And where I just heard actually this morning that the middle school is planning on having this event again this year. It hasn't happened. It didn't happen last year. So I can definitely reach out with the date and let you know when it's happening. And we're hoping to, pass the torch on to the new organizers to envision, and we really do like to survey the kids and find out what kinds of activities they would want to have there. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cecilia.
Well, so you guys are amazing. That is a huge undertaking. Both of them are, big undertakings. And I've organized some pretty large events, but nothing ever quite like that. And how many people does it take to successfully pull that off?
You want to field that one first?
Well, I think I think the Cobrachella and the COVIDchella are organized very differently. If I were to answer the question about how many volunteers, I mean, I basically did everything except I had musicians who played. And so everyone was an adult for the most part. We did have a couple of kid bands, but I basically was just corresponding with the leader of the band. And they're in charge of setting their band up. They, I don't have to hire roadies. I don't have to get sound equipment. I don't have to get a stage. They have their driveways and they tell me where they live and I put it down in a spreadsheet and I make a map. So I pretty much did everything except for play the music, and I did have 2 volunteers who helped me moderate the Facebook group. And then I had a couple of volunteers who offered their driveways up because I did end up having musicians who did not live in Albany. They lived in Oakland or they lived other places and they needed a driveway. But that's it. So it was just me, a couple of people who let people into the Facebook group, and a couple of people who offered their driveways. So that's it. No other volunteers.
But you had artists and swag, pardon that background noise, and swag, and it looks like it was a big operation, to be honest with you.
Well, so at the middle school, which is separate from what Eugenie organized with the map, the festival at the middle school, is a much bigger, it's a big production. And so at the level that we did it with all the different booths and activities and, I would say at the top level of volunteering where somebody was really kind of working for several months, getting things together, there were probably about 30 people on our kind of core team, behind the scenes, really doing a lot of ahead of time. Day of, maybe 50 or 60 people would kind of take slots throughout the day. In any community, in our community, there's a lot of people that are always the ones to step up and raise their hands, and and then a lot of people that kind of reap the benefit of all that. So exactly. So
sounds like Rotary Club fundraisers.
Exactly, right. And so Dorothy and I were pretty well connected in the community by the time our kids hit. We had both been in PTAs in elementary school. We kind of had our people that we could reach out to and rope in, and guilt and, all those things into helping us out. We also invited high school students to send the volunteer sheet out to high school students. And we also sent this sheet out to, not really asking them to volunteer, but we gave free tickets to all the middle school staff. So if they wanted to come and bring their families, we really wanted them to come enjoy the day as well. So yeah, ours was a pretty big production.
Yours was labor intensive.
Yeah.
Thinking about that job of putting something like this together to have a really compelling program that is a fundraiser, that is designed to build community within the community. Maybe each of you could give a piece of advice or two to Rotary clubs that might be out there trying to do projects on their own to develop things in their community. So if you
Yeah.
have a thought or two, that would be great to kind of finish up with.
Well, I guess I could give some practical advice, just things that I've learned along the way. Because like I said, I'd never organized a citywide music festival during a pandemic before this. And just in the 5 events that I put on, I would say I've learned to try to simplify. So before I was coordinating, asking musicians, so tell me when you can't play, and I would sort of try to organize it all. And then basically I finally figured out I just need to send them a doodle poll that has a number of slots per time, and they just sign themselves up, and it's first come, first serve. There's still a lot of cat herding that goes on, still have to ask people, so where's your address again? Da, 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 or whatever, but that's okay. That's fine. So I think one thing is to try to simplify the amount of work that you put in by putting everything in one place rather than having to chase people down with emails. And yeah, I mean, I think I work very well independently. My dad had a saying, if you want something done right, you do it yourself. So I was totally fine being the only one doing it, or one of the only people doing. I did 99% of the work, and that was fine with me. How about you?
I guess, I mean, my first piece of advice is to capitalize on the strengths in your own community. So like, for example, we had a great graphic designer, we had a great set designer, if those aren't people that you have in your midst, then find other, where are your other strengths, and really capitalize on those. And then the other thing I would say is that this, and I think I said it already, but this kind of event could really be scaled down. What really mattered was that the kids were there and having fun. And like, did the branding and the font and all the logos and everything kind of tie everything together? Sure. And it made it very visually a fun day. But ultimately, whatever you can do to ensure that the kids are having a good time. And then lastly, just, we wanted to raise a little bit of money for our PTA. Our schools aren't super well funded, public schools in general. And so the PTA is supporting a lot at the schools. And so of course we wanted to raise some money, but we ended up in the end really not worrying too much about the total amount of money we were going to bring in. We realized that the community building element of it was just as valuable as the dollars coming in. And so that was another thing I would keep in mind.
Fantastic. So in a minute, I'll hand it back to you two for the final word, just whatever you want people to kind of have in mind as they walk away. But for all of you who have been watching this, we asked you to do a couple of things. First, let us know you were here. There is an attendance form just a little bit farther down the page. Please put something in there. And if you're a Rotarian making up a missed meeting for your club, putting in your email address properly will mean you get a note that you can pass along to your club secretary. We also have a little farther yet down the page, the discuss section. And that is a forum for sharing your thoughts on what you see in the meeting, what you see in the program, responding to thoughts other people have posted. But that's one of the ways we're in touch with each other in our online asynchronous eClub. So we hope you will put things there. To all guests who may be their first Rotary meeting, Rotary International is a group of 1.2 million people in 36,000 clubs across the world. Our motto is service above self, and we in the Rotary eClub of Silicon Valley especially enjoy innovative, clever ways that you can bring a community together to make a difference in the lives of those who are in need. And so just like this program talks about really special approaches to a music festival to raise funds for worthy causes, and we hope that you will be finding interesting ways to make those same kinds of things happen in your community as well. As we always like to do, we hand it back to our speakers for a final word. So Jen and Eugenie, I hand it back to you.
I'll go first. I have 2 really quick things. One is that never assume that middle schoolers won't do silly and fun and interesting things. You just got to find the right way to tap into that very unique age group. And secondly, I just want to do a really big plug. Now that we're able to have people from other communities come and see our music, COVIDchella number 6 is happening soon. So if you happen to be in the East Bay and want to see some really great music, it's a very special day of people walking and riding their bikes around town to see some really great music. So
thanks.
yeah.
And if you'd like to come, I am still trying to follow safe and socially distant
Oh,
guidelines. So
sorry.
you can join by signing up and asking to be invited to the Albany COVIDchella Facebook group. There are membership questions that must be answered. And I had to be very, very strict in the beginning, less strict-ish now, but with the Delta variant, we still have to be very careful. And
Sorry about that.
That's okay. I want to protect my community. No, people can come, but they just have to join the Facebook group and answer the questions. My last words are just to say, I've always known this just in my gut, but I have evidence now that music heals. And it has been very healing for our community to come together, to listen to music. It has been healing for musicians to be able to play. I've had bands come and tell me that I saved their band. They would have died if they had not had the Cobrachella so they could perform live. And the other thing that's really important is that I really place high priority in all levels of musicianship. So of course, we all love and respect, the well-known artists that are famous and have records and everything. But there's also all kinds of great musicians who are amateurs. They're so talented and they never would, be heard except if you were to come to a local music festival like the Covidchella. So I just want to, make sure that people know that it's just important for all levels of musicians to be able to express their artistry.
Wonderful. Everybody, thank you again for joining us, and we will see you next week.